Rich Rodriguez has been let go by the University of Arizona. Some sexual harassment allegations have been brought to light, and it's a little bit more confusing and involved than it would appear on the surface. So we bring in Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football to help us sort through this situation and maybe gain some perspective on what could be the real reason why the university has let its football coach go. Tony, we appreciate you stopping by to help us on a Pac-12 coach who just experienced a season in which wasn't a great season, but still won 7 football games after winning just 3 in 2016. So it appeared as though maybe the job was safe from a football standpoint. This comes to light and would seem to be a fireable offense if guilty, but that's where the facts become a bit mixed.
Yeah, always glad to join you, Mark. Always glad to do it. It's a strange situation. Rodriguez was fired last night via email by the university and was told that he was not being fired for cause. In other words, he's being fired without cause, and so the school will be paying his $6.3 million buyout. Now, the firing came on the same day that a lawsuit surfaced against Rich Rodriguez and the athletic department. It is a sexual harassment claim from an administrative assistant within the football department. What happened was she filed what is called a notice of claims with the state attorney general office, which in Arizona is generally a precursor to the actual lawsuit. And the estimate is that we've heard that it'll be about a $7.5 million lawsuit. It's a strange situation because in the day after, and even late last night, the university issued a statement saying that they were firing Rich Rod because they found things that had come to light during an investigation into his behavior and after the investigation. Well, now they hired an outside law firm to do an investigation when the allegations first surfaced about a month ago. And they were kept very quiet, and this law firm did its work, and the law firm issued a report to the school that cleared Rich Rodriguez of any wrongdoing. So when the school says there are problems that they found that happened during the investigation or within the scope of the investigation, as well as after the investigation, it's not clear what that actually could be. There's the lawsuit. And the school in all reality is firing him because of the lawsuit. They just aren't saying so. They're kind of couching it in, we had on-field problems and off-field problems. On-field, sure, they didn't live up to what the school wants, fine, fire them. Every other school in the country does the same thing for the same reasons. You're not happy with the on-field product, you make a change. To do it now, after the early signing period, to do it now after the bowl loss, is just, the timing is just strange. And the only thing that you could really tie it to is the school is afraid of the lawsuit, doesn't want any part of the lawsuit, is cutting him loose. They're just not saying so.
So we both know that any football coach who is let go at a big-time football program in this country is let go the day after the final regular season day, if not just later in the day of the season finale, because that program has made the determination that they want a new start with someone else. They've assessed the season, assessed the job performance, and more importantly, they know that there's going to be a fight for the top football coaches, and they want to have the vacancy ready to go and make their pursuit of another coach. The reason I bring that up is it seems as though the football aspect of this seems to be a convenient throw on to help the rhetoric that we also underachieved on the football field and the performance wasn't quite what we wanted. Therefore, we can couple that with kind of sketchy behavior by our football coach to let him go. Because if we're simply going with the behavior off the field, well, he's been proven not guilty or not at least proven guilty, and therefore we'd be firing him for some behavior that we're not comfortable with, but we might as well tack on the football disappointment near the end of the season as well, and that kind of helps deliver the message.
Yeah, I think that gets into the timing issue that we were talking about. You're absolutely right. If you wanted to fire him for the football issues, you had every reason to fire him after the Arizona State loss, at the end of the season. I mean, he lost 4 out of his last 5 games this year. He's got a 43-35 record in 6 seasons, which, he's had one truly good season at Arizona when they went 10-4 with a bowl game win in 2014. So he's had a very mediocre record at Arizona. You had every reason to fire him if you wanted to after the Arizona State loss, after the end of the regular season, like you said. Use one of the assistants as the interim coach for the bowl game. They lost to Purdue in the Foster Farms Bowl up in the Bay Area. But they kept him, and they kept him through signing day, and they signed 16 kids on signing day, and then they fire him a week later, and they, as you point out, they kind of use both angles for it. They talk about on-field performance, but then this off-field stuff also. And as you pointed out, the firm cleared him of wrongdoing within whatever the scope of their investigation was. It was never made public. So how deep they dug, how far they went across a spectrum of different issues, or if it just stuck to the sexual harassment issue, it's tough to say. But again, the firm cleared him. If you're going to pay a firm a couple $1 million to do this, and then when you decide you're going to fire him, kind of discount what the firm did because you're going to say, well, we found problems. Well, then just pick an avenue, pick a lane, and drive down that lane is what I'd like to see the Arizona administration do.
Tony Siracusa joining us from Last Word on College Football to discuss Rich Rodriguez firing at the University of Arizona. So I'm still trying to figure out the motive of the university and how much truth is in the line that they're delivering for the cause of the firing. So let's say Rich Rodriguez was Nick Saban. If he was delivering those kind of results, they get the no guilty verdict from the outside firm. They breathe a sigh of relief, wipe the forehead, and pull him aside and say, clean up your act a little bit, help us out here a little bit. We're trying to continue to win championships. If he delivers a 7-6 season as he did, which by Arizona standards doesn't necessarily prove much or isn't what they're looking for, but it's not awful. It's not 7-6 at USC. So let's say he delivers 7-6, but he's an outstanding member of the community, upstanding credibility. They're probably thinking if they have the standards that I expect and believe they do on the football field, that okay, we weren't real happy with the way things finished here in 2017, but he's going to keep his job for another go around in 2018 because he's graduating kids and he's an upstanding member of society, and he went 7-6 this year. We give him another year. But it appears as though they weren't real thrilled with the way he finished the season. And then you mix this in and they're like, okay, we've got an underachieving coach and now we've got this mess to deal with. And even though he was considered not guilty, this is real messy and it doesn't look good for us. And he's not a real plus factor on the football field at this point in his career. We can just wash our hands of it and kind of make up a determination to sell everyone that's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head right there. If he didn't have this issue, he probably gets one more year. And I know there are a lot of people at Arizona who wanted him gone 2 years ago. For those outside the Western region, Arizona is the only original. Well, they're not even original Pac school because they were part of the Pac-10, not the original Pac-8. But if you take the Pac-10 before the recent expansion with Utah and Colorado, they're the only school out of that Pac-10 never to play in the Rose Bowl, never qualified for it, and it's a cactus, that hurts for them. But I think you have it right that if this other stuff hadn't happened, he probably gets another year. He brought in 47 new players this season. which was a big topic of discussion with with the Pac-12 media days, because he had some players transfer. He had some players that were coming in as walk-ons. He had some gray shirts. He used every bit of latitude he could humanly use to get his 25 signees plus some new players. He had players graduate. He had some players transfer out. He had some players that he said were of mutual departure. They knew that they weren't going to play for him under his new system, because he gutted the assistant coaching staff prior to this season as well. And so with the new offense, they knew that they weren't going to see much playing time. So he had tons of room and brought in a lot of new players. And you get that 1 year under your belt. It was a mediocre season at best, a generous mediocre season. But you could see the future. You could see some good young players. You could see a kid like Khalil Tate, a quarterback, who shows a tremendous amount of promise. And you could see glimpses of a good offense. And so you give him 1 more year, saying we can see a little bit of light on the other side. But then he gets this other thing, and you kind of roll them all together. And the university was quick to wash their hands. I mean, again, they fired him on the same day that the notice of claims was filed with the state attorney general's office. They did it within hours of the notice being filed.
Well, if you're a decent human being, sexual harassment is nothing to joke about and nothing to scoff at, and certainly something to be taken seriously. I would hope that justice would be served. I think that any reasonable one of us would just hope that the truth be found out and justice would be served, regardless of what that is. And I hate the court of public opinion and what it's done to certain human beings. In a number of these celebrity type cases that we've seen over the last 6 months, when we don't necessarily know the truth and we jump to conclusions based on hearing this phrase, which, if it's true, it's very serious and it's deplorable, but we need to hold off and wait until we know. And then in this circumstance,
I think you get a
Sure,
couple
Tony.
different things in there that you're right about. One, the issue of sexual assault, and this is sexual harassment. Let's be clear about that. But any of those topics on college campuses is a real burning point right now, because of the Baylors of the world, because of situations where it got out of control within college campuses. And so I think universities and colleges across the country are a little bit more sensitive to this than and trying to purge anything or any semblance of being involved or having any knowledge of any wrongdoing whatsoever, because it is an absolute hot button. And a lot of it was, there are a lot of young women who were forced to keep quiet about things, or who weren't believed. This woman was an employee of the university, but still in a college athletic setting, I think that it's a particularly hypersensitive issue. I also think that you take this with Rich Rodriguez, who, in the big scheme of things, while he's had a bit of a dotted past, it hasn't risen to anything of this level. People may remember when he left West Virginia for the Michigan job, and it was up to him to pay his buyout at West Virginia, and he refused and left the university, on the shelf for millions of dollars that he owed them. And, in the meantime, had taken all of his files out and done it in the darkness of night and things like that. At Michigan, of course, he had a terrible record at Michigan in 3 seasons, but there were also rumors of, and there was some actual findings of abuse of NCAA rules with regards to the amount of practice hours that he was putting the players through every week. But again, those are minor when compared to even the discussion of sexual harassment. I'm not trying to compare those in any capacity. I'm just trying to say that Rich Rod there's always been a little bit of edge to him, and I've talked with him one-on-one, met with him a few times at Pac-12 Media Days, and he's always got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. But this is huge. This is big because of the sexual harassment tag. Whatever the truth is, I hope the truth comes out, as you say. If it isn't true, if he's found for whatever reason not guilty, the school has really ruined his career by firing him for this offense, because these lawsuits take some time. He's going to be sitting on the sidelines, no pun intended. He's going to be unhireable for some time. If he is if he is found guilty, if this does go through the legal process and he is found guilty, he doesn't deserve to be hired, obviously, at another university, nor should he be. But if he isn't guilty, then this has really damaged his career, because it's a tag that you don't easily get rid of, even when you're not guilty. Just the accusation being out there and it being the primary reason why you're fired. So there's a lot up in the air right now when it comes to Rich Rod.
And the well-known possible candidates for replacement would include Les Miles, formerly of LSU and Oklahoma State, Kevin Sumlin, recently at Texas A&M, Mark Helfrich, of course, at Oregon, Chuck Cecil, Arizona assistant, and one of their all-time great football players, Brian Harsin, from Boise State as well. All right, Tony Siragusa from Last Word in College Football. Yes, sir.
They're going to hire a national search firm. They've announced they're going to do, which again is the timing is just really odd, because national search firms take weeks, and we're sitting here, first week of January. You're looking at February, and in the meantime, you've got a staff that doesn't know its future going out trying to do recruiting for you, because you've got another 8 players that are verbal commits that didn't sign in the early signing period, and you're going to try and get in February. I think Chuck Cecil would be a good call, because it would add continuity. He is an Arizona legend. He knows the offensive scheme. He knows all these new kids they brought in the last 2 years. I think it would be the best hire, but you usually don't hire a national search firm to wind up with a Chuck Cecil. You hire a national search firm and pay them millions to go get a bigger name. Butch Jones, by the way, is friends with the athletic director, so I'm going to throw his name in the mix, even though I think it would be a disastrous hire for Arizona.
Well, if so, that seems to be a common angle of Arizona-related athletic directors hiring buddies to come in and run the football program.
Right, absolutely.
Tony Siragusa from Last Word on College Football, helping us sort through the Rich Rodriguez firing at the University of Arizona. Tony, we appreciate the time.
Always glad to do it, Mark.